Let me just. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining this LPC meeting 4, the Village of Ossining Downtown Revitalization Initiative. On behalf of the mayor, who will be joining us in a few minutes, and Karen DeTore, the village manager, and the team here, we want to thank you for your time, for your interest, for your engagement, for your involvement. And we're looking forward. This is really kind of getting to the crunch time now, where we're going to have a lot of work, a lot of decisions to be made, a lot of discussions, and it's all very, very positive. So thank you all very much for your interest and your participation and your caring and your volunteerism. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the team.
Thank you so much, Marcia. This is Catherine Zanell. I'm a planner with VHB, an engineering and planning firm that's been brought on board by the Department of State to assist the Village of Ossining in implementing the Downtown Revitalization Initiative. We're really happy to be here with you this afternoon for the 4th meeting of the Local Planning Committee. Let's go ahead and kick it off. Okay, so here's our agenda for today's meeting. We've begun with a welcome from our co-chair, Dr. Marcia Gordon. We'll then review the conflicts of interest policy for LPC members and ask that folks who need to disclose conflicts do so. We'll spend a half hour discussing the project evaluation process. So that'll be a big chunk of today's meeting. And then we'll spend an hour hearing from 3 project sponsors about their potential DRI projects. Specifically, we'll be hearing about the Singsting Prison Museum, their preview center. We'll be hearing about the Olive Opera House redevelopment, and we'll be hearing from the town of Ossining about a performance center on the waterfront. We'll then briefly discuss next steps and open it up for public comment. In terms of public comment, there are a few ways that you can ask a question or share a comment. You can raise your hand on Zoom. You can press *9 if using a telephone. And there's also a Q&A box. If you submit a question or raise a hand during the presentation, know that we'll see it, but we want to address it until the public comment session. We've also disabled the chat function to reduce distraction, and we'll remind folks that the meeting and all commentary is being recorded. Okay, Susan and Marcia, I think I'll turn it over to you for the conflicts of interest policy.
Okay, Susan, are you more prepared than I am to present?
Sure, I can read the statement.
Thank you.
Sure. Each local planning committee member is reminded of their obligation to disclose potential conflicts of interest with respect to any of the projects that may be discussed today. If you have a potential conflict of interest regarding a project you believe will be discussed during the meeting, please disclose it now and recuse yourself from any discussion or vote about that project. For example, you may state that you or a family member have a financial interest in the project, or you are on the board of an organization proposing the project. Do any members need to make a disclosure?
We have one hand up from Mr. Brent Glass.
Yes, good afternoon. I have already disclosed my conflict as far as the Singsting Prison Museum is concerned. I probably should also mention that because we are proposing to work closely with the Olive Opera House, that may pose a conflict. So I should mention that.
Thank you, Brent. Is there anyone else where they have a relative, a family member that might have a financial interest in one of the projects being discussed? Or you yourself? Okay. All right. Please inform the co-chairs during the meeting if the need to disclose a conflict arises unexpectedly, and of course, then recuse yourself from the discussion or voting on that project.
Great. And if I could just interrupt, I believe that the mayor is on now. So,
okay. All right, great. And that's it for me, Dr. Gordon.
Great. Okay.
Great, thank you. Mayor Levin, I wanted to give you the opportunity to say hello if you'd like before we move on to the next slide.
Well, Marcia always does a great job, wonderful co-chair and highly experienced in this. I welcome everybody. I'm excited to hear about the various projects, and I do appreciate all of the work. And for those of you that also joined us on Saturday to answer some of the questions, and I think just sometimes seeing pictures and talking to the individuals is really helpful to all concerned. Really excited to learn about the various projects and where people see it going.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, with that, we can begin our discussion of the project evaluation process. You can go to the next slide. Yeah. Okay. So on these next two slides, we do have a bunch of text, but we wanted to take this opportunity to outline what the next 2 months or so will look like. We are now more than halfway through the DRI planning process, if you can believe it. And we are at the point where we're looking forward to working with the LPC to evaluate and assess potential DRI projects that could be recommended for funding from the state. So as folks I know have heard many times now, the projects that are selected for DRI funding should catalyze or continue downtown revitalization and investment. In June, the LPC will be asked to recommend a slate of potential DRI projects. Those are then submitted to the multi-state DRI program for final funding decisions. So as folks know, there's approximately $10 million that will be allocated. The LPC will recommend a slate of projects totaling between 12 and 15 million, and then the state will make the final decisions as to which projects are funded. Today at our 4th LPC meeting, we're going to do a number of things. First, we'll provide a high-level overview of the feedback that was collected at the 2nd community meeting, which was held on Saturday, as the mayor mentioned. Then we are going to review the project evaluation criteria that you as LPC members will use to determine which projects to recommend. 2 of those criteria are drawn directly from your input around what economic and community benefits ought to look like in Ossining. We'll then discuss opportunities for feedback at the 3rd community meeting. So we'd like to get your take on how to hear from community members at that 3rd and final meeting. And then last but not least, we're going to hear directly from 3 project sponsors about their proposed projects. At our last meeting, Christy and I presented brief overviews of all 16 projects that came in through the call for projects. And we heard from you all as LPC members that you'd like to speak directly with the project sponsors. So we're looking forward to doing that today. I should flag that we have drafted a downtown profile and assessment, which is the first chapter in the strategic investment plan. That is the sort of culminating document for this process. We had hoped to review that today, but the schedule is tight as is. So we're going to circulate that by email following this meeting for your review and comment. Okay. So looking ahead at next week's meeting, we're going to hear from the Village of Ossining about their proposed DRI projects. 12 of the 15 DRI projects that are currently under consideration are sponsored by the village. So we'll dedicate 2 hours to hearing from them about each of their projects. Then prior to LPC meeting 6, which will be in early June, we're going to provide draft project profiles for your review. So that's going to have detailed information about the project scopes and budgets, and potential benefits. Then coming into LPC meeting 6, we're going to ask you to assess each project and select a slate of projects to recommend for DRI funding. This preliminary slate of projects will then be shared at a third and final community meeting in mid-June with an opportunity for feedback from folks. And then at LPC meeting 7 at the end of June, we'll share community feedback and there'll be a vote on the final slate of projects. So yeah, looking ahead in the next 2 months, we are really looking forward to engaging together with you as LPC members to assess these projects and move toward a slate that you'll recommend for funding. I think if you go to the next slide, Christy, I can pause here and see if folks have any questions about what's coming up. You'll see we're at LPC meeting 4. We have a 5th LPC meeting that we added to hear from the village about their projects next week. We're going to shift the following LPC meeting to early June. And then we'll have a community meeting mid-June and a final vote before the end of the month. I can pause there and see if anyone has any questions before we keep moving forward. No? Okay. Let's do it. Okay, so community meeting 2. This meeting took place on Saturday, April 30th from noon to 3 p.m. at the community center in the gymnasium. The objective of community meeting 2 was to help participants understand the DRI planning process and also create an opportunity to offer feedback on the different proposed DRI projects. And we hope that this feedback will inform your decision-making as LPC members. The meeting began with a presentation, about 20 minutes, where we discussed the DRI program for folks who may not be familiar, and the planning process, which spans 6 months, as we just saw. And then we had station visits. It was open house style. Each station had a poster board with information about a proposed project. And participants at the meeting could learn about the project, speak with the sponsor, and then offer feedback. We asked people to respond to 3 questions in particular. The first was, does this project have the potential to be transformative or catalytic for downtown Ossining? We also asked that question of you as LPC members last month. We asked folks, what do you like about this project and how would you improve this project? 2 projects of the 15 that were shown had additional targeted questions, which will be discussed in more detail next week when we hear from the project sponsor. Public improvements as part of the mixed use development at the Main Street lots had some targeted questions, as did the streetscaping at Station Plaza project. I think I may have seen a hand. No, okay, I'll keep going. Okay, so in terms of feedback received, there were approximately 40 meeting participants who attended on Saturday, and they provided a total of 116 comments across the 15 proposed projects. We got those comments in the form of Post-it notes. We've read all 116 comments and transcribed them. We'll be sharing that with you. And we can say that 35 of the comments were generally positive. Things like, I love this idea, or great, very good, generally positive. There were 11 comments that were negative, something like, I don't see the purpose of this project. We recorded those too. And then the balance of the comments included suggestions and ideas. Things like need more shops, something more specific like change direction of the stage for the town of Ossining's project. or something like yes to parking as long as public space is preserved. So we have all of those comments transcribed, and we'll be sharing them with you to review. The project with the most comments was the public improvements as part of the mixed use development at the Main Street lots, also known as Market Square, so the redevelopment of Market Square, followed by the Lewis Angle Park performance space, and then the Singsting Kill Greenway improvements. So each of those got more than 10 comments each, and other projects received 10 or fewer comments. For those who could not attend the community meeting in person, you can go and view all of the meeting materials, the poster board for each project, as well as the presentation online, and you can offer feedback until Friday, May 20th. So we're leaving this online feedback portal open for 2 weeks. You can visit this URL to check it out. And we'd really like for LPC members to share this information with your networks, because this is the critical juncture for getting feedback on the proposed projects. But as we're developing them and moving toward funding recommendations. Okay, I think I see a hand from Kim. Is that right? Okay, do you want to chime in?
Thanks. You indicated that there were poster boards on each of the projects. I wonder if there's any possibility of putting them up publicly, potentially in the library, until this May 20th date, to give more people an opportunity to see them and weigh in.
Yeah, that's a great idea. That's something that we can speak with the project team about.
Okay.
Yeah. I think in total, we had something like 35 boards. We had one for each project in English, one for each project in Spanish, and then a couple of introductory boards. So they would take up some space, but we can speak with the village about whether the library can accommodate the boards so folks can view them again. Okay. All right, let's keep moving. Okay, so we wanted to take some time before we begin hearing from project sponsors to discuss the project evaluation criteria that will be used. The following are based on guidance from New York State, so you'll see these used consistently across DRI planning processes. The first, we've talked about, does the project have the potential to be transformative and catalytic? We've broke it down with some questions, which you may want to ask project sponsors. The first is, will this project significantly enhance downtown? Will this project make other things happen, like attracting other public or private investment? Will the project have a long-term impact? And does it have the potential to create benefit beyond the DRI boundary? So could there be ripple effects, so to speak? The next three projects speak to a version of project feasibility. Project readiness and feasibility, we're thinking about, can the project break ground in 2 years? That's a requirement from New York State. Are there any regulatory hurdles or other considerations we should be aware of? For sponsor capacity, we want to ask, can the project sponsor reasonably participate in the project financially? And will it be managed well over time? And then lastly, we care about public support. So does the project have public support? We can see that in comments from community meeting 2. Sponsors may also provide letters of support to demonstrate that folks would like to see the project move forward. I see a hand from the mayor. Would you like to chime in?
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to say, in some of the criteria going back a couple of minutes ago, when I opened up the day, one of the things I really wanted to highlight and really add an exclamation point is the definitions. So everything has public interest. Every nonprofit, of which we have more than 200 registered in the village alone,
Wow.
has a public interest and has a benefit and is transformative and all that. That's really why they exist, to be honest with you, from a one-person organization to a national membership. Really, what I ask people to do that were there is to think about these projects, not in terms of their singularity, but as part of a portfolio that can last 20 to 30 years and isn't just beneficial to an agenda of bringing social justice or helping with an infrastructure, but actually think about what it does for the next 20 years for the deepest and widest part of our community, rather than a narrower part. So you may like Project A, but Project A will benefit a narrow segment in our community. Project B might be not as deep, but a wider group. And to take that into account when you look at criteria. Similarly, there are not just what is the startup costs, but what will it require from a lifting over the next 20 years from the municipality, which we are a village. I mean, understandably, cities have greater capacity. And so to keep what I would call a perspective, not an agenda, but a perspective on the kind of things in the sense of a portfolio, some big hitters, some smaller hitters, that when you put them next to each other, they all make sense. If you look at them individually on the boards, you might feel differently than if you said to yourself, here are the top 5 that I personally would choose. This is how I actually think in total they would fit together. I'd like people to think a little more broadly in this group, in the gallery as well, even beyond your own thoughts about what you believe is best. How do you see the other projects fitting with what you're thinking? So I just wanted to bring that to the foreground, because that was, at least in the introductions, as we spoke, and I do try to sort of push that out there as much as possible. It's important to understand the projects, but you have to understand the portfolio of projects is what I would like to leave people thinking about. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I think that, it's sort of implicit in the evaluation criteria is that the projects also meet the vision and goals that had been set out. And so the goals cover, a variety of different issue areas, from transportation to economic development to arts and culture. And so I think you're right that looking at the slate of projects and understanding how they all work together and the synergy is an important consideration. Okay, does anyone have any questions about these project evaluation criteria?
There's no hands up.
Okay. Okay, so 2 of the project evaluation criteria, as I mentioned earlier, are based on direct input from the LPC, which was provided via a survey, a Microsoft form, between the last meeting and today. And so we asked you what, how you thought we ought to describe economic benefit for the Village of Ossining, and similarly how we ought to describe community benefit. And it was really cool to look at all the responses because there was significant overlap. So for economic benefit, I think nearly everyone who responded said that they want to consider whether projects would increase tax revenue. So we have that on the board. Folks also wanted to consider if projects would create new jobs or workforce development opportunities for a diverse group of people across the income spectrum. And then generally there was a sense that folks would like to see projects that increase overall economic activity in Ossining, thereby supporting the growth of existing businesses, as well as the creation of new businesses. So yeah, we were able to put these together based on your feedback: tax revenue, jobs, workforce development, and overall economic activity to support businesses. For community benefit, folks were very interested in improving the quality of life for those who live in Ossining. and deepening a sense of pride and belonging among all residents. So that's the first question that we put here under community benefit. Folks also wanted to consider if the project would increase the quantity and diversity of goods and services offered. So everything from restaurants to markets. Folks also wanted to consider if the project would improve walkability, connectivity, and ease of access to downtown Ossining. And lastly, folks wanted to consider if the project would advance sustainability and decarbonization, which is also a goal of the state. So yeah, I wanted to pause here. I realize this is the first time folks are seeing this, so there may be additional thoughts following this meeting, but I thought I would pause here for folks who were able to fill out that survey and see if these criteria align with the feedback you had provided, or if there are any comments you'd like to share generally.
There aren't any hands up.
Okay. Maybe we can give it one more moment. Folks have a chance to take a look. And
Catherine, I just want to add one thing that
yeah,
with these criteria, I would encourage LPC members to be thinking about them as they're hearing the project presentations and asking questions, so that this is, in the forefront of your mind when we're hearing this week and next week.
yeah, I agree.
Kim Jacobs has her hands up.
Yeah, I guess I just would assume that implicit in the first bullet under community benefit is beautify the community. I'm going to assume it's in there. We don't need to add it, but I think that's an important element.
Yeah, I think you're right that we could define quality of life. And I think many people spoke to beautifying downtown or otherwise improving the aesthetics. And so yes, that in my understanding was implicit in quality of life.
Okay.
Yeah, folks also spoke to things like safety and public space as part of quality of life.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I would definitely agree with the safety issue because there are a lot of areas walking in downtown that don't feel very safe. The main crossing is, it's problematic. So I would love to see that addressed.
Got it. And is that safety in terms of like pedestrian safety?
I'm
as
sorry
you're
if I can
crossing?
interrupt. Erica, main crossing is main crossings, or are
Well,
you talking about the
so
five-way intersection in the
The
middle of the
five-way,
village?
the five-way
Ah.
is tricky. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yes.
that's what you mean, because they just, the folks, we're like, we have our code words, but that's also has been brought up as part of other projects as well. But it's specific to that, right?
I mean, listen, that's one example. And I don't know if any of the projects we're seeing before this committee are going to address that particular intersection, but I would say in general, it would be really interesting to walk for someone from the state to walk the state roads at least. And then also, I mean, a lot of Ossining is difficult to walk in, unsafe. Sometimes the sidewalks are inadequate for disabled folks, people with strollers. They're very narrow. So yeah, there are safety issues. I'm not sure how, maybe with the streetscaping project, that's something that can be addressed.
Yeah.
But just that's definitely something that's been worrisome, at least for me and my family, walking in the DRI district.
Cool. Yeah, that's helpful to understand. I think the third point under community benefits speaks directly to walkability. That's something we've heard from many folks throughout the process, and it's also a goal that the state has for DRI communities. So walkability is definitely top of mind. And yes, I think the Station Plaza project is meant to address concerns about walkability in that neighborhood. I'm aware that the village had initially included a project to improve the five-way intersection in the DRI application, but it's no longer being proposed for DRI funding because it's already moving forward. So we can also make a note to ask that they speak to that at next week's meeting.
Okay, thank you for that.
Sure. Jeff, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, just to add bikeability to this, I think that's critical, particularly for looking to potentially at e-bikes. I would personally sooner bike in Midtown Manhattan than downtown Ossining, because we don't have any dedicated bike lanes here. So I think that's an important thing.
Got it. Yeah, I know we have that in the goal for transportation, but we may want to bring it in here too. Yeah. All right. Okay, let's keep moving. Okay, so now this is looking a little farther ahead toward community meeting 3. So we're hoping that, over the next 2 meetings, today and next Thursday, we'll hear from all the project sponsors. Then in early June, you as LPC members will assess projects and have a preliminary slate of DRI projects that could be recommended to the state for funding. And then in mid-June, we're going to have a community meeting where that's shared. And we thought it would be helpful now to speak with you about how best to engage folks in that conversation and what sort of feedback you would find helpful as LPC members. So yeah, just to quickly review, we would expect that meeting to begin with a presentation where we would describe the preliminary slate of DRI projects. So as opposed to using boards, for example, we'd use a presentation where we talk through each of the projects. But then we would like to solicit community feedback. At Saturday's meeting, folks use Post-it notes. That's really great to get a wide range of comments, and we're going to share that feedback with you. For community meeting 3, I think we're hoping for a sort of interactive activity where folks can express their support for particular projects, so that you can account for that information when making the final recommendations at the end of June. So some potential activities could be a survey. We can have folks answer survey questions about each project. In our experience, that has been one way to get more detailed feedback. However, not everyone will fill out a survey about 15 projects. So we recognize that it's a big ask. And it's also a somewhat individual exercise, right? So if we distribute a survey, everyone's sort of quietly working on their survey. Another potential activity could be doing some sort of voting, right? Using dots. That's one way we've done it in meetings before, where folks maybe get, a strip of 5 or 8 or 10 dots, and they'll move around the room and use those dots to vote and express support for particular projects. That's certainly more interactive. Sometimes I think folks may be shy to engage in that sort of activity because, where you're voting is very public. And then another maybe sort of middle of the road option could be a budgeting exercise where maybe we'll have, something like little banks in front of each project, and folks will get tokens and they could spend their tokens to express support for the projects that they'd like to see receive funding. So then our goal would be to compile that information and share it with you all, so you have a real sense of where people are in terms of public support. But yeah, I can pause there and see if folks have any thoughts that they'd like to add or ideas that we should consider as we are looking ahead and planning for continued public input.
Well, I feel like I'm hearing a silence. I can't tell if my screen is frozen or not. But let me just chime in, people. Like a lot of the folks on the, I could talk all day. I could do the whole 2 hours and talk. Some of you that know me know that. The real purpose of the meeting is for you folks whose time is really so valuable. Like Melita, I'm looking at you on my screen. I'm not, Brent, I mean, your time is super valuable, but Melita, you're taking time from your business right now. So you're losing money as you're sitting here because you're here not doing your business right now. So I want you to take the opportunity right now, not forcing you to say something, but honestly, there are a number of people on this call that are here to really hear from the folks in our community. So I don't want to speak. I want to really pull you guys in and say, please, we know how valuable the time is. If you think some of these ideas are stupid, you could use that word. Nobody here will be insulted.
We will not take it personally, I promise.
If you think the idea is brilliant, say so. If you have your own idea. Melita, if you want to put a survey in your store to help us, say so. If you say, listen, folks, I don't have time for a lot of this stuff and I don't really know how this works, just say so. Like we really want to hear from you guys what you're thinking. That's why we want you in the committee in the first place. Really, that's the goal here today. Because all the other people that get paid by government, they can meet tomorrow and the next day and the next day and continue this, but you guys can't. So please, let me open it up to our community.
I'm here to help. If a survey is good, I don't mind. I talk to people here and I'll give it to them. I'll explain what's going on. And that's what I like to do too. Much easier than speaking to the computer. I'm always available here to pass the word around. And that's which I have been doing that. Which, like I was listening to Erica about the streets and how hard it is to cross streets, and I agree. By open door, we only have one pedestrian stop sign. I think we should have more downtown crossing for First Village or in the Five Corners. Yes, that's very important. A sign that can say that cars have to stop when there's people crossing.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd be willing, if a survey was chosen or some other form of information, to actually put it in your store for a little bit so people.
For sure,
You would be.
yes. And I'll explain to people, yes.
Okay. Erica, you're a community member. I know you've got lots of thoughts. I know you know about surveys, about voting, about budgeting. You're on EAC, you're the chair. So I really would like to hear.
I do. I think that's an intriguing idea you bring up of having Melita put it in her shop. I'd also suggest other places in the village. Put one in the toy store. Put one in First Village. Mm-hmm. What about the ICFA
bookstore?
The bookstore, exactly. The Padres Hispanos has a new store up near Seatown. Mm-hmm. Put it in various places around town that meet the people where they are.
At the farmer's market.
At the farmer's market. Great idea.
That they actually have done. I'm not saying we can't do more of that. And there's a village fair coming up and we thought about that. Right. Erica, your experience professionally, survey versus voting versus budgeting. Do you have any preference or thoughts? Because sometimes going very wide takes more time to analyze analytics, than the actual exercise is worth. So what are your thoughts? I know your professional background. Do you have any to help us and to help the consultants?
I can't say that I've done a lot of feedback solicitation in my professional background, but from my gut, I like the feeling of voting the best. I think it's the least influenced by anything other than it's a very fundamental yes or no vote. In other words, I think.
I agree.
Okay.
People don't want to take the time doing the surveys because just like Catherine said, it's many different things. They will say, yes, I'm going to do it, and they'll take it home. They don't do it.
People don't have a lot of time, and I think the dot voting is the fastest way to engage people.
Got it. I see a couple hands now. I see a hand from Marlene and from Brent.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback in, and I have to agree with my fellow board members. That is probably not the best way to go.
Doing a survey, you mean?
Yeah, doing the survey. Yeah, no.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Brent, do you have an idea?
Yes, and I appreciate the mayor encouraging me to say something because she knows I don't need that much encouragement. But I think the way how you ask people is I'll leave that up to the people who know the community better than I do. But I think it's important what we ask them, how we what is the choices we're giving them. If it's just putting a dot next to a project, that's one thing. I think if we could step back and frame a question about what is the best investment to make in the community now, because I think what I'm hearing as we go through the projects is not so much a competition, but a fork in the road, or two paths. One is more investment in the quality of life for people who are living in Ossining, and the other is our investments in making Ossining a more attractive destination, more attractive community to visit from people from the outside, and how their influence or impact will help the community. So if there's a way to frame a question as part of this survey of how people feel about that, that would be interesting to me to see what the results would be. I don't have the exact wording right now, but that's where I see the two paths going forward for the DRI. And the $10 million sounds like a lot of money, but it can, if it's spread too thin or spread in too many different directions, I think it would weaken its impact.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So I think what we're hearing, and thank you, Mary-Levin, for stirring the pot. But I think what we're hearing is that the idea of meeting people where they're at is important. And so we want to have feedback opportunities for folks in places that they already visit, like businesses along Main Street, including Melita's shop. And we also want to have a presence at community events like the Farmers Market or the Village Fair. We did have a board at Earth Day, for example. And so we'll continue to do that. To your point, Brent, I think it is a lot about what we're asking. And I think asking people, framing it as an investment and asking where they would like to see that investment directed is helpful. And for the meeting, something that's interactive, that's fairly quick, feels like the right approach. So something like dot voting for a meeting seems to me like what folks would like to see. I've got another hand from Dana and then from Erica.
Will this survey be put on social media so that people can possibly share it, or spread the word?
Yeah. So right now in the online feedback portal, the virtual meeting room, there are surveys for each project. And so that has been posted and will continue to be posted on social media. In that way, we're asking people to provide feedback on each of the 15 projects, similar to what was done at Community Meeting 2. I think looking ahead, once we have a preliminary slate of projects, we would also want to ask folks to express their support for those projects and see if we've landed on the right mix. And so yes, I think to your question, Dana, there is a public feedback opportunity being pushed out on social media right now. And then I think going forward, we should also use social media to reach people.
I'm not sure the portal is as effective as perhaps pulling it out and disseminating it separately from the portal. I think it has to be as accessible and user friendly as possible, and maybe it's just a matter of posting links and stuff like that. But anyway.
Yeah, we do also have a Microsoft form that could be used. So that's like a, sort of more conventional survey for folks who may not want to use the room.
If I may, and not that I have to speak for Dana White by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm not sure that we're hearing her. I think the comment has more to do with just curating things is not quite the same as effectively using social media from an informational point of view and an interactive point of view. Curating information is what not such great museums do. Interactive education is what really good museums do, where you involve people for their input. You could put 2 or 3 projects out there at a time and say, yes, no, right? Like very simple kind of reaction from them, increase my taxes, increase investments, whatever. Just using portals and saying, go look at 15 things, honestly, is social media. It just isn't really the best way to use social media for people who are busy. I may be reading into Dana's question or comment, but I'm hearing it a little differently, I think.
That's helpful. No, I think that's really helpful.
I mean, at least I'm hearing it differently, and maybe it's because I speak to Dana a lot more than others, but I think it's effectiveness. And what Brent said was really important to note. I go to meetings a lot, which is why I'm oftentimes late for meetings, and I use something called a whiteboard on my second screen, which is what are the things that bubble up to the top from somebody that I need to sort of keep in front of my mind. And one of the things he said, which just bubbled up, at least for me, thank you, Brent, is that for him, it's splitting up into a fork of current residents, not versus, that would be the wrong word, current residents, and then like sort of investments and attractions and things. It's for him at least. So I wrote that down, Brent, because it's interesting that that it's bubbling up as 2 buckets, and it's good that things are bubbling up at this point in the project. So I appreciate you bringing that forward. I didn't think of it that way, but I think that you've hit something there. So I appreciate you bringing it to the foreground. But we need to keep our eyes on that, because maybe it is. I mean, look, Yogi Berra said, you get to the fork in the road, just go with it, right? There is no wrong fork in the road.
Take it.
It's just that even in speaking to what Dana did, maybe you start taking those bubbles and saying, what's a great investment and what do you want done now? What's a quality of life versus an investment? Maybe that's also a more interactive way of asking people things rather than listing 15 projects and asking them for their input. Just a thought. I'm not suggesting that I'm writing a survey as we're sitting here, but I'm just playing back what I'm hearing.
Yep, that's helpful. All right, we do want to shift to the project sponsor presentation shortly, but I see, Peter, you've got a hand. So let's do that, and then we can kick off the presentations.
I mean, this is a general comment, and I don't know how to necessarily incorporate this into this, but, I find myself frequently wondering whether people truly understand that a commercial tax base lowers your property taxes. I swear that sounds obvious to those of us in this meeting. I'm not sure it's obvious to the general public out there in Ossining. And I think it's an important thing to point out, because there are people who are like, well, it's fine and we don't need any more stores. And, really what I want to do is go park and go to the post office and there's 2 restaurants and I don't care. That's actually, not, a non-existent attitude. People are like, it's fine, leave it alone. And so what's the growth of a commercial tax base about? Even in education, relative to the impact that would have on Ossining as a whole, I think is an important thing to get out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That,
yeah.
This is this is not about just busying up the village center for no apparent reason.
Yeah, and I think you're talking about the project benefits, right? Like how we're communicating about the potential benefits.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, I think that's something we should bear in mind as we're thinking about individual projects, but then sort of a slate of projects overall.
In general, like the entire focus of what we're doing is affected by communicating that, which is basically a discussion of why do we need more parking? Why do we need, why would we want more commerce downtown? What are the implications of that? There are implications of that, and I'm not sure that necessarily always gets across. Mm-hmm. As well, I mean, there are, what do we have, 25,000 people in the village of Ossining, 35, and how many of them really are downtown? How many of them have ever set foot inside of Melita's store or First Village Coffee or any of it? I'm downtown Ossining. There seems to be a core group of people who are downtown, and Greater Ossining hasn't really come down and seen what it's all about. So that's another part of this is, what could this be? Don't just think about, oh, I got annoyed. I drove downtown to, and there wasn't parking at the post office. That's a very, small way of looking at it. And if we can get beyond that, that's really, I think, an important part of the conversation. We can go out with surveys, and those people who are engaged with downtown, sure, they'll give us their thoughts. Yes. But those 27,000 people, I don't know that we hear from them ever.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're trying to do are reach the folks who will be affected, right, by the DRI investments, and who are interested in providing feedback. And I think what we've been hearing from folks, both on the LPC and the folks who have joined meetings, both online and in person, is that they're interested in seeing, as we shared earlier, diversity of goods and services, and enlivening downtown. So I do feel like that is largely what we're hearing from folks. But I think your point is well taken about the benefits, right? And as we're thinking about project benefits, communicating what that means for the village as a whole. Yeah. Kim, I see a hand. I do want to give you room to chime in. I'm also cognizant that we have our first project presenter on deck and we're running behind. Okay, cool. Thank you. All right, I'm going to turn it over to you, Christy, to start our project sponsor presentations.
Thanks, Catherine. So as Catherine mentioned, we are going to now start hearing from project sponsors regarding the Singsting Prison Museum Preview Center, the Olive Opera House, and the Lewis Angle Park Performance Space. Each presenter they're going to present their projects, and then we're going to allocate some time afterwards for a question and answer session with that project sponsor, and then we'll move on to the next project. Okay, so the project sponsors who you're going to be hearing from today will be providing the following information regarding their projects: the project sponsor and any project partners, the location of the project, the current conditions at the project location, the proposed project, what is the scope, the timeline, any benefits, and then the project budget and the DRI funding request as well. And something to think about, I know Catherine and Susan both alluded to this earlier, at LPC meeting 6, you will be asked to assess the proposed DRI projects using the project evaluation criteria listed below. And as Susan mentioned, you might want to take these into consideration, keep them in your minds as we're listening to the 3 presentations that are following. As you want to keep these in mind, think about what they're presenting, and maybe take down some notes so that when time comes at LPC meeting 6, you're going to already have some notes about these projects and have an understanding, and you might know where you want to, or how you might assess these projects based off the list of criteria. So I'll leave this up for a second or two if you want to take a screenshot or write these down. And then we're going to hear first from the Singsting Prison Museum regarding the Preview Center. So just another second or two so you could take a look at this list if you don't have it already in front of you.
I have Hi, it's Marsha. I have a question.
Go ahead.
Is there a time limit that's been given to these presentations? Just, just in fairness to everybody else? I know at the REGC we do that.
Yes, so each project sponsor will be allotted 10 minutes for their presentation with a 10-minute question and answer to follow.
Okay, great.
All right, so with that, we're going to go on to the Singsting Prison Museum Preview Center. And I believe, Brent, you will be presenting on this project's behalf.
Yes, thank you. Excuse me. And thanks for the opportunity to present this afternoon. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Brent Glass, the Executive Director of the Singsting Prison Museum. And I previously served as the Director of the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History. The mission of the Singsting Prison Museum is to tell the story of the 200-year story of Singsting Prison, an extraordinary place in American history, which happens to be located in Ossining, but also in addition to telling that history, to connect this story to the national conversation on criminal justice and to challenge our visitors to imagine a more equitable criminal justice system and to build a better society. So the goals of the museum are to open in 2025, which is the 200th anniversary of Singsting Prison. And to get there, we first want to create a preview center in Ossining, which we hope will open in 2023. We also plan to create an Arts and Humanities Center as the centerpiece of the museum, which we hope to open in 2024. And by 2025, we plan to be actively giving visitors tours of the historic cell block, the building, the ruins of the building that was built in 1825 by incarcerated men. That landmark building still exists. It's the last remaining building of the 19th century of Sing Sing Prison, and it is located within the maximum security Sing Sing Correctional Facility. Those are our tangible goals. The intangible goal is for the museum to serve as a transformative institution, a resource for education and culture in Ossining and in the region and for the nation. And as I said in the video for the DRI application, I believe the museum will serve to transform Ossining from a place that is associated with incarceration to a place that is a center for the national conversation on criminal justice reform. But I'm going to speak for the next few minutes about the Preview Center. What is a Preview Center? This will be a place that will introduce visitors to the Sing Sing Prison Museum and to our mission, as I just described it. We will present Sing Sing Prison history through media and a small number of artifacts, including repurposing the exhibition that is now at the community center about the history of Sing Sing Prison. There are some artifacts there that we will repurpose and use in the Preview Center. The Preview Center will also be a place for us to solicit feedback from visitors for future planning, not only for exhibitions, but also for programs. It will be a programming space for presentations to small groups, including students, local organizations, and tourists. And I should mention that we've been a virtual museum for nearly 5 years, but we're ready to actually have a physical place, a footprint within the community. We've worked very closely with the schools, for example, and Ossining High School and Peekskill High School, developing a curriculum on criminal justice. We've also been working with Bethany Arts Community, Hudson Link for higher education, rehabilitation through the arts. So partnerships are a big part of the strategy and the strategic direction of the museum. The Preview Center will also be the starting point for tours of the historic cell block. The plan for the Preview Center, at this point, our preferred site is the Olive Opera House. We were in our application as late as March, we were still talking about developing the Preview Center at the former prison powerhouse, which is located right next to the prison, just on the north side. But the cost of developing that property and the timetable that it would take to develop that site is just not feasible. And we now prefer to develop the preview center at the Olive Opera House. It also complements, as it turns out, it complements the larger vision for the downtown revitalization initiative, which includes the Opera House, the parking deck, the revitalization of the community center, the Main Street facade restoration. So the investment in the preview center, I think, will leverage or complement the other projects that are being considered now as part of the DRI. We think the design and fabrication will take 12 to 18 months from the time we are given the approval to get started. We anticipate attracting 10,000 visitors in the first year, and the way we arrived at that number was pretty conservatively. We would be open 200 days a year, 4 days a week, and an average 50 visitors per day. And that's how we come up with 10,000 visitors per year. We have a report that was developed by Urbanomics several years ago that we can extrapolate the economic impact of those visitors, and we can share that with the committee. We anticipate a 5-year lease that we had been negotiating a 5-year lease for the powerhouse between the state and the village, the state and the town, the state and the museum, but none of those leases actually were signed. But we still believe within 5 years, for a 5-year lease is a reasonable commitment we can make. We also believe that this investment will leverage some of our existing grants. The major grant that we would like to implement, it comes from the National Endowment for the Humanities to develop an Arts and Humanities Center as part of the museum. And it would really be the centerpiece of the museum. This would be a place for exhibitions, programs, conferences, classrooms, theater, and we are looking at space within the Olive Opera House as a potential site for the Arts and Humanities Center. Those plans are not quite developed yet. But that grant from the National Endowment for the Humanities is a total of $1.5 million, $365,000 coming from the NEH, and then we're matching that with 3-to-1 match, and we have raised we've raised all but 280,000 of the match that we need for that investment. I just want to share the budget for the preview center, and Christiana, if you have that you can share on the screen, I can review that, and there you go. So the site improvements that we anticipate, and this gallery space in the Olive Opera House is about 850 square feet. It's a small space. It's right next to the bookstore. It's at 65 Central Avenue. But it does need some work on the inside. It needs to be made accessible for people with disabilities. The restroom needs to be upgraded. The office space needs to be upgraded. So we're estimating $85,000 based on $100 a square foot. The exhibition fabrication and exhibition design are based on industry standards for museums of $500 a square foot. And the exhibition design is 10% of that. We have a 10% contingency, 10% for project management. And then we put in a line for the deinstallation of the exhibition at the community center. Again, this is an estimate. We need to refine that estimate, but we think it will be roughly $60,000 to remove that exhibit and carefully remove some of the artifacts that are in the exhibit. The total budget's $697,500, and we've asked for $650,000. We have on hand $47,500. We could access additional funds. I was asked this week whether we would be able to contribute more from the museum, and I think that that is possible. So I want to stay within my time, and so I'll answer any questions.
You're right on. You have 40 seconds to spare if you want to
Well,
add
I have more to
anything.
say. No.
All right, we could start. So Dana, if you want to kick it off.
Hi, Brent. Thank
Hi.
you. So the entrance, I'm trying to, so it would be, the bookstore entrance is right there on Central. And so it would be the space down
Yes.
to the left of that. So you would have that separate entrance off the street.
Yes.
And that's kind of a separate store space or retail space or whatever space. Because
Yes.
I had thought you were thinking of something else, but that's good. That's an interesting.
Right. And
I
there's
thought
no
you were thinking
step.
about
There's,
inside the actual building, but you're thinking about next to it.
that's right. It's a
Okay.
separate entrance. There's a restroom in that space that would have to be upgraded, but it's definitely usable. It's a nice little space. It's a little smaller than we originally had planned on developing, but with the bookstore next door, we won't have to have a bookshop in the preview center as we expected to. I think it's very accessible to the downtown. And if the parking deck is completed and some of the other amenities that are being discussed, I think it could be a great.
Sorry to interrupt, Brent. Melita, would you mind muting yourself? Melita, could you mute? Thank you so much.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. And I see we have 3 questions too. So I wonder if we should acknowledge some of those folks, Christy. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Sorry. Kim, go ahead. You could go ahead. Brent, if you want to finish, and then Kim, if you want to go ahead.
Question. I'm sorry, Brenda, I didn't quite understand. So will the museum ever move to the powerhouse, or has that just proved to be infeasible?
I don't think so, Kim. I think that maybe somewhere down the road when the Department of Corrections fully finishes the vacating the powerhouse. They have an auto repair shop there. They have some other uses that they are using, that other functions that are located there, and their timetable and their budget for doing that is just it's just going to take too long and too much money. So I think we're committed to having the museum in the downtown. The main goal of bringing visitors to the old cell block is still our goal, and that's an extraordinary building, an extraordinary landmark that nobody gets to see, and it's probably the most important landmark of criminal justice history, certainly in New York State, but maybe one of the most important in the nation. And we need to find a way to bring people there, and that remains our goal.
Go ahead, Marlene, if you want to ask your question.
Sure. Hi, Brett. I guess my question, one of the questions was asked about the cell block, but the other one actually talks about how much state aid are we getting toward this project. I don't know if it's in the entirety or not outside of this. And is there any town or village financial obligation that you're looking for? I used to sit as a trustee, and I know at one point they were asking the town and village to cover most of the costs. So I think that those are questions that I think still loom out there that need to be answered for the general public as well.
Well, yeah, thank you. We have, through Assemblywoman Sandy Galiff, has been very active in securing state funding for many of the elements of our program. We have $2.375 million in state aid to municipalities, which can be used for the renovation of the cell block, because we're going to need to spend some money there. It could also be used going toward the museum building itself. We have a $500,000 grant from the Empire State Development for the project. We have also secured nearly a $500,000 grant from the Environmental Protection Fund of the state, which can be used to match the National Endowment Grant. We have Tau Foundation funding, which is a private foundation based in Connecticut that has offered $100,000 toward the match of the NEH grant. We have also anonymous donor gave us nearly $250,000 toward the NEH matching. I know I'm missing a couple of grants. So there's a variety of sources from the state and federal and private level, and the county of Westchester County has appropriated $250,000 toward the project. So there's a variety of funds that we're drawing on, and this, but we don't have funding right now for the preview center. So this is coming along at a very critical moment for the museum.
And just before,
And then,
oh, go ahead,
I'm
Brent.
sorry, Marlene, there was a second part to your question?
The second part was was there any obligation being looked at from the town and village?
No. No, our operating budget will be made up of earned income. This is the long range, earned income and contributed income from fundraising. But we're not asking the town or the village for any operating support. I'm envisioning an operating budget when we're fully built out of around $1 million a year. And that will provide funding for 12 to 15 full-time jobs.
Okay, we have a question from Joyce, who is at work, but she's listening in, and she typed in a question. And her question is, for this project, what changes will this project create to the facade of the Olive Opera House?
Well, I'm gonna leave that to the Olive Opera. We're not proposing. We've seen the drawings for the facade improvements, and we like them very much, but they're not part of the scope of this project. But I think the Olive Opera House, who you'll hear from, has some really good ideas about opening up and bringing more light into the building, and so I'll just leave it to them.
All right, and so we do have about 1 more minute for questions. So Seth, if you don't mind, go ahead with your question. And then Dana and Erica, we definitely want to hear your questions. If you don't mind, maybe typing them into the chat so that we could then ask those questions to Brent after this meeting. We don't want to ignore or exclude any questions or commentary.
Yeah, I'll be really brief, and maybe more of a consultant question, but we're also going to be hearing from Olive Opera House today, similar to what Joyce was asking about. But just in terms of the implications of our review, looking at this project, which is located at another site that we're going to be reviewing for funding. I mean, if there's anything that we should be paying attention to in that regard, or if that makes it, if there are any redundancies, I suppose, in the cost for this build out versus what might be happening at Olive.
You're asking me?
Yeah, I don't know if that's really to you, Brent, or to the consultant team. It was just when looking at how this money would be spent.
Yeah, I certainly would want to leverage and any investment. To be honest, when we submitted our proposal, I didn't know the Olive Opera House was a proposed project, and so it's been a great and pleasant surprise that they were thinking about this as well, that the owners were thinking about it as well. So we should definitely talk about that.
Yeah, and also, go ahead, Catherine.
I was going to say, to Seth's point, we will be sure to confer with both project sponsors to ensure that there's not redundancy. So any funding that Brent is, including in his project budget for in the Singsting Prison Museum's budget for renovation, would not be redundant in the Olive Opera House's budget for renovation.
I was going to say that exact. So thank you, Catherine.
Awesome.
And thank you, Brent. So if anyone does have any questions for Brent, either put them in the chat or send your questions through the LPC email that we have, and we can have Brent address those, or send them directly to Catherine and myself, and we can also facilitate getting those questions responded for you, and we could share with the group. So thank you again, Brent. And
Thank you.
Moving on, we're going to go to now the Olive Opera House, in which the project sponsor team actually, Jamie, if you could promote them to panelists, and then they'll be able to share their screen and give their presentation.
Sure, they're being promoted now.
Thank you.
Not that it's terribly important, but I don't think that I am actually included as a panelist because I don't have the chat capability in this.
Yeah, the chat actually this time around was disabled, so we don't have the chat feature. We only have the question and answer feature.
You are a
this time
panelist
around.
because
But
you have
are, yes.
video and you can speak. Yeah.
Yes, you are a panelist though.
Because when I open the chat feature, I don't see how I could pose a question, but that's fine. I'll send it.
Yeah,
in.
same here. I wasn't able to use it.
I could see the question that Joyce posed, but I can't myself write a question.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
interesting.
I defer to JB on that. If not, definitely
can-
send it via email.
Yeah, let's just figure that out for next time. It's no problem. Thank you.
Great.
I've brought everyone over that you had asked.
Great.
for. The only person that I don't see is Mr. Fry.
Oh, they are together.
He's with Jacqueline. I can see them.
Got it. Okay.
I just stopped sharing my screen. So if someone from the Olive Opera House team would like to share their screen, go ahead.
Otherwise, you could.
Oh yeah,
you could just speak.
No need.
Yeah.
No need to.
Okay, great.
Great. And you have 10 minutes starting now.
I don't see my sister on this. Is Twisney here?
Oh.
Um,
Let's see. Hopefully. Let's just
Brought
check.
her over. I'll try again. Sorry.
Thanks.
Twisney is doing the presentation, so she.
Oh no, I know. I keep clicking for her to be promoted, but yep, she should be over now.
Hi.
There you are.
Hi, sorry.
No problem.
Let me just get this screen.
Once you get situated, then we could start. No, I promise your countdown has not begun.
Thanks.
Sorry, 1 second. Okay. Okay. Hi, my name is Twisney Fan. My sister's on the phone, Madeline Fan. We are the owners of the Opera House. And we also have John Fry and Jacqueline Tyler on with us, who are the from Nexus Creative, and they are the architectural firm that we're employing to help us through this. None of us are used to being landlords, building project managers, but we are going to do our best. So the building is located at the corner of Central and Brandreth at the 5-way intersection. It was purchased in the 80s by our parents and another artist to be used predominantly as studio space. So for the last 35 years or so, it was basically 5 or 6 artists at a time using space in there to produce paintings and some sculpture. And there was a retail space that sort of transformed between upholstery and martial arts and various groups. But we had a fire about 5 years ago, and my mother passed. The other artist was not in the picture anymore, and so we've been using the last 3 years basically to restore the building back up to code. And in September of this year, or October of this year, we finally were able to reestablish a certificate of occupancy. Concurrently, a friend of mine had approached me, and she had this dream of opening a bookstore, and so we sort of rallied to get the bookstore in place. And so they've opened. They were without heat for a considerable amount of time, but we're sort of working towards a bigger picture. While we were doing this, so we were sort of thinking about what to do with the building, whether we should sell it
we did get an offer or some interest from some the Peekskill Brewery, actually. But sort of once the bookstore opened up and we saw people coming into the space, asking about the space, we realized that there was really a need to keep the cultural aspect of the building going. Obviously, we have an affinity towards the arts. So we would really like to open up the building to be more accessible to the community. The space that you see on the upper left-hand corner is sort of the what we're calling the flex space. And ideally, we'd love to see some performances there, being able to maybe show some movies, seminars, cultural events in the city. The space is screaming not to be broken up into little offices. So our main desire is to renovate the building in such a way to support this culture, particularly the arts community. And our preliminary plan is to probably house 4 to 6 tenants in the existing space. Some of the groups that have come to us are theater organizations, a theater school, some artists who are looking for studio space, a dance company, the Singsting Prison Museum, and various other smaller businesses. So there does seem to be interest. Our goal here is to try to open up the space. I think you touched on this earlier, at the street level with some more windows. And I think the main cost to rehab the building, I don't know how many people have actually been in there. It's pretty rudimentary inside, functional but rudimentary, and it requires quite a bit of work to make sure that we have sprinklers in the right place, ADA, fulfill ADA requirements if we're going to be opening it up to a larger group of people. So our timeline, coincidentally, we began speaking with Nexus in November of this year. We were kidding around that, maybe we can apply for some grants, and then this grant opportunity came about. So we feel like there's a little bit of kismet here. We're in the process of speaking or actually solidifying the project. So unfortunately, because of the timing of the application and where we are in the process, we're not as far, we're as buttoned down, but we have a very good idea of what we want to do. Just recently, in fact, earlier this week, we have identified a mechanical engineer firm, and they're going to be working with NYSERDA. I think if he hasn't reached out already, he will be reaching out this week. And so our main budget costs are in the slide on the left. I think that the most expensive things are sort of sprinklers, fire alarms, access. There's a freight elevator now that has to be operated by a person. So putting in a new freight elevator. We would like to do some facade work. Basically, nothing too fancy, but making the space usable for a wide range of uses. we're asking for or we've expected the budget is going to be about $3.4 million. And based on something that we can go into much more detail, obviously. And we're asking for 1.5 million. Essentially, as a family, I think we're not seeing this building as a money-making proposition. I think we would just like to cover the running costs. I went to Ossining High School. Madeline grew up in Ossining. We really liked the changes that have happened in the town over the last decade or so, maybe a little longer. And we feel like this building sort of needs to be renovated to make downtown a little nicer to walk in and support, and really to support the arts.
It was always kind of a dream that, when we were growing up, we'd go to Soho, and the idea was you bring the artists in and then the community comes up along with the artists. And that was definitely something our mother and Fred Thurs, the other artist there, had discussed. And the point of this building was always to do something good for Ossining. And so this grant seems like a perfect way to marry the intentions behind our mother and Fred's feeling towards the town, and to kind of find a way to voice that. Sorry.
Great, thank you both. We're actually approaching that 10-minute mark. And I just wanted to say thank you for that presentation and the history behind the project as well. I feel like that was helpful for the LPC to hear, as that is some new information for them. With that, it looks like Bill actually has a question. So Bill, if you'd like to go ahead.
Hi, I think it's a very exciting project. I have a bunch of questions just so I can understand the scope a little bit. First, how many square feet is the whole building?
It's about 13,000 square feet.
And is the budget numbers that you put up on the screen, if you wouldn't mind, could you share that? I'd just like to look at it a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
I'd love to be able to help you guys, if we can, just to see if we could be helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to go through this on the screen, but if you could just share this so I can look at it offline, that'd be great.
Yeah, we would be glad to do that.
So in your presentation, it looks like you're trying to get to a carbon neutral building. Is that one of the things you're trying to do?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I think that's great. And I wanted just to make a general comment to the DRI committee. The state's head is in this space where they're trying to get to electrified buildings and get away from carbon creation of buildings that continue the problem. So I think this is great to do that here. That's terrific. The geothermal piece you have in here, where will you put the geothermal field? It looks like you have your building covers a lot.
I'm going to have to let the architects answer that.
In subsequent to this this package, we've gone down the road a bit with our mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineers group, and I think the consensus is we would not pursue geothermal. And then there are numerous reasons why you highlighted one. The other is certainly the potential partnership with NYSERDA and their inclinations. So that's a great question, but I feel like that's already evolved out.
Okay. If you want, again, we have people who I'd be happy to help, just to be helpful. Just other questions. I'm assuming that the viability of this relies on the parking lot in terms of getting people to have a place to park if you're going to be successful.
Yes, most definitely that would help.
Okay.
Quite a bit. Yeah, but the other portion of it is that perhaps some of the events would be in the evening and some of the existing parking lots open up.
Yeah, okay. And then from an operational standpoint, when this is all done, what's the organization that will run it?
Well, we're a realty corp right now. So we would probably hire some kind of building manager and you know, a more robust building manager and handle it that way.
Is it a nonprofit organization? Or you guys?
It is not. I don't think at this point we're thinking of going in that direction.
Okay, I wasn't judging, just curious.
Yep. No.
And on the building roof, is that part of the budget, or has that already been done?
The roof is in pretty good shape. Perhaps we're adding solar panels.
Okay.
So add to that notion as a part, if the more aggressive decarbonization initiatives are pursued or incorporated in the grant and incorporated in the project program, there will be a lot going on the roof, quite frankly.
Right, yes.
And I do just want to add for the LPC members and also maybe for the team as well, that if you were to meet or exceed, or mostly I should say exceed, the New York State Energy Code, you are then able, instead of asking for the 40% of DRI funding, you could push that to 50% for your DRI ask, as long as you're exceeding the New York State Energy Stretch Energy Code. So just something to keep in mind. And that's why it would be very important to speak with NYSERDA and start with them in the process as soon as possible.
Noted, and all of that is churning literally as we speak.
Great, great. Does anyone else on the LPC have any questions?
Not to cut you off, Bill. I think those
Yeah,
are really good
sorry.
questions. And we hope that you'll keep asking additional questions as well.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
I see that we got a comment from Joyce who said, extremely excited about this project and the possibilities, historically bringing back to the center of town a place for arts and theater. Love it.
I should say that, you know, from the input that we're getting from just passersby and people that were coming up to me, it's like, I wish this building was even larger than it is, because I would love to be able to accommodate more.
Okay. Hearing no further questions, perhaps we should move ahead.
I'm very excited for this building. I hope they can get the grant because it's the only beautiful building left downtown without being more apartments. So I really think it would be great for the downtown, for the arts. So I'm really in favor of this. I just have a question. If this is a grant and it's going to be for rent, I think it's so hard nowadays to be in business. I don't know if rent could be a little controlled, so it makes people stay and do well and attract more and more people. I'm always worried about the way things go, so expensive. 30 days goes in a minute and people don't make enough money to pay for rent. So it's important if it's a grant and money comes from different sources that the landlord thinks about that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. We're not in this to make money. We're in this to maybe break even. And
thank you.
And to have it be sustainable also. Like you know, obviously we don't want to go through this if we don't think it's going to last.
Thank you. Thanks for thinking about downtown Ossining. Really happy.
I have experience in working in co-ops and things, so it's really important that the building meets the community where the community is, as well as bringing in other cultural events that can spark something into the town of Ossining. So
I just want to be clear that between this and the previous presentation, this particular site is asking for 20% of more than 20% of the entire DRI available to us, because we don't get 10 million, we get 10 million minus the 300,000. So if I did the math right, is that what I'm learning from this? Is that accurate?
We can double check those figures, Mayor Levin. I think that's right, but yes, we can double check that.
All right.
Okay. Right. Anyone else on the LPC have any questions? And again, if you don't have any questions now, definitely send an email over to Catherine and myself, and we could get those squared away for you. All right, with that, we'd like to say thank you to the Olive Opera House for your presentation. That was great and very informative.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have the Town of Ossining presenting on behalf of the Lewis Angle Park Performance Space. So if, Jamie, if you can promote, I believe it's Victoria, as well as the town supervisor.
Yeah, it's going to take just a moment.
No problem, thank you.
I'll also flag for folks, if we spend another 10 or so on this presentation and 10 for Q&A, we may run a bit over with public comment. So I think we'll add maybe 5 or 10 minutes to the meeting in order to hear the presentations and then take any comments that folks want to offer.
Everyone's been brought over. I'm going to take the Opera House folks and I'm going to bring them back over as attendees.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So I'm going to share my screen, and then my name is Victoria Caffarelli. I work in the town supervisor's office here in Ossining, and we will get started.
Great, thank you, Victoria. And you'll have 10, once you get situated, you'll have 10 minutes for your presentation.
Okay, so hello, everybody. Good afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity to present the Lewis Angle Waterfront Park upgrades to the Downtown Revitalization Initiative. We're very excited to have the opportunity to talk a little bit about what we are thinking about the entire waterfront. Lewis Angle Park is a town-owned park in the village, as I'm sure you all know. And we've been making upgrades to this area for a number of years and have received grant money to continue some of those upgrades, which include such things as you can see that little piece of the wonderful spray park that we have. We've added picnic areas. We've just recently upgraded our kayak racks. We have had an incredible concert series, summer Friday night concert series and food truck Fridays, which I have to give a shout out to Madeline Zahach for helping with initially. Yes, Maddie, you, I know you know it. And also partnering with so many members of our community. It's really become a community gathering space. We've been working hard on some of the water testing to try to get the beach open, and to that end, and because of the wonderful space that we have and the wonderful experiences that we've been having with the concert series and other events that have taken place down on the stage at the waterfront, we are presenting an upgrade to the actual performance space. What we've gotten money basically through CDBG grants, and we'll hear a little bit more about that later, to move the comfort station or the bathrooms that are sort of smack in the middle of our green space and take up a good deal of the area that we could enjoy performances from, down to the southern end of the park, so that it would better serve both an open beach as well as our spray park, our playgrounds, our picnic areas, and where a lot of the family action is. And that sort of gives us a little bit of a blank slate to work with in terms of what we could do with the rest of the open space. Our stage was originally built a number of years ago, and it's great space and people love it, but it doesn't have a roof. And it really has been limiting for us in terms of what we can do and how we can plan. Obviously, the elements come into play, especially over the summer. And we've had many, a Friday afternoon. Again, I know Maddie and Victoria Caffarelli on this call have lost a few hours of their lives trying to figure out if we should call the concert series or not, if I was away at the last minute, because rain would actually impact the equipment, but it might not impact people's desire to show up anyway at the waterfront. So we had hoped that we could put a roof on the space, but it's not really the structure that was built for the stage isn't sturdy enough to handle a roof. So what we've been thinking about as we're moving the bathroom is to think about building a new performance space, state-of-the-art performance space that would have some sort of a roof that would also theoretically be a floodable space, as we have been working with the climate adaptive design studio. And we got 2 grants from the state, and we partnered with the village to look at our resiliency along the Hudson and at this park, as well as the village park. How are we preparing for sea level rise and climate change, and making sure that our park can continue to be a place for the community to gather and be open space, but also be cognizant of the changes in sea level and how it impacts the structures down there. So we'd like to look at a performance space that could be floodable, and some of the feedback that we actually received from the community from last weekend, we learned that people still want bathrooms there, and so we've been thinking maybe a slightly upgraded space to what we had originally been thinking, which was more of just something for the performers, maybe a little bit of a backstage area and a roof, and something that could make sure that any equipment could be protected from the elements. But now we're also thinking we might want to upgrade that a little bit and to include some sort of public bathroom facility as well in that space, and potentially an area for a snack bar or vendor or something like that to go. So what we did present maybe doesn't include all of that. I think that, again, we're just looking at resiliency, continuing our placemaking, and we really think that this has been driving economic development, as we see so many people coming here to say, oh, I really didn't know that much about Ossining, and now having the opportunity to be here for any type of performance has really gained Ossining, I think, some additional points for people who want to come here and visit, and they're going to come back here also. This summer, we're actually, for our concert series, we're making sure that some of our brick and mortar businesses are going to have a place to also serve and deliver food down to our concert goers. So we're really making sure that we consider all of our businesses, our local businesses, and our specifically our food businesses, food and drink businesses. And I think that is it for my part of this. Just overall, this is really a large part of the overall, a bigger vision for upgrading Lewis Engle Park, making sure that it really is serving our community to the best of our ability, making sure that also, that we work closely. In fact, we just got off the phone this morning with Verizon. We had applied for a grant during COVID to offer free Wi-Fi in the park, and including the Village Park, the Henry Gordine Park as well. That's something that's moving along, and we're hoping to have that in place soon. So again, this is a public gathering place. We think that having a state-of-the-art performance space down there is going to significantly increase the desirability of people coming to this park, enjoying this park, and getting the most out of it, and also bring people here to Ossining to enjoy all that we have to offer. And with that, I will turn it over to, I think, Victoria Caffarelli.
Actually, it's going to be Valerie Monastra. So
Valerie Monastra, our planner for the town from Nelson Pope and Voorhees.
All right, so we wanted to take a couple minutes.
Valerie? I'm sorry, just before you begin, I just want to say you have 3 minutes left in your presentation. And I just wanted to let you know.
Sorry.
Okay, so I'll spend a minute and a half. We wanted to really get everyone to understand that this project is a piece of a much larger project. And what we're looking for is funding for this component of the larger project. So this is an overall plan that we are proposing for the Engle waterfront area. It includes specifically dealing with, as Dana said, relocation of the bathrooms, the existing bathrooms, which will be move over to the beach area. We are also proposing kayak launches and paddle board launches, as well as potential public swimming area along the beach. And we are also proposing to redo the fishing piers and potentially connect those as to make a larger fishing pier. And then as part of that is the relocation also of the stage. So really this particular project, and Victoria is going to go into the funding that we have for the various components so far, and funding that we are still seeking on some of those components. But this is one component with the relocation of the stage that has not been funded at this point.
And this is why we are seeking DRI funding for this project. Victoria?
Yeah, so we talked a lot about existing conditions. I'm also going to skip through the timeline because this was in our initial application. But yes, this is a summary of the grants that we've received thus far to go through this larger upgrade of Lewis Angle Park, including the grant from the DEC for the Climate Adaptive Design Studio Phase 2 for resiliency at the waterfront, as well as a 2-phase project for relocating the bathroom that we're receiving 50% of that funding from the Westchester County Community Development Block Grant Program. The town is funding the other half through in-kind services and also investment in infrastructure. For the performance space, right now our DRI request is $150,000, which the town would plan to match $150,000 to sort of accomplish the overall goal that we're looking to achieve here. And then finally, to address some comments that we received over the weekend about relocating the bathrooms, we do have another request in through the Westchester County CDBG for a smaller bathroom facility to kind of go along with the stage area that we are going to continue to pursue and hopefully would hear sometime next winter if we were successful at getting that grant funding, so we can address some of those comments we heard from the public. So overall, we're looking at a project of, overall of over $1 million, of which we're requesting $150,000 from the DRI opportunity. And questions?
And just one other thing to note, the town has engaged somebody to undertake the design work for the stage at this point and to give detailed cost estimates beyond the $150,000 DRI request and $150,000 match.
Sounds like that was perfect timing.
Yes, sorry about that. And that is great to know, Valerie. We'll definitely be in touch regarding all this new information that we have learned too about the project. So this is great. Great presentation. Does anyone on the LPC have any questions?
We left speechless. Sorry. Go ahead.
All right. I do see two questions from Joyce in the Q&A. So she's asking, as a performing event organizer, the use of the space, I appreciate the proposal to redesign the stage. Thank you. And make upgrades will help protect the talent equipment. Will the upgrade to the stage include additional outlets for equipment? Yes, we intend on making sure that we have adequate capacity, electric capacity, all that good stuff for the new space, recognizing that this would be an upgrade to our existing situation, and it will hopefully address needs for performers and event organizers for many years to come.
And I just would like to add that in addition to our summer concert series, this has been a gathering space for marches, protests. Again, people come here because it feels very central and very important to Ossining. And so we get requests for all sorts of things. And we've had requests also for performances that tie into Singsting prison as well. So, or correctional facility. So, and obviously we have our Earth Day festival there every year, which I think brings about 4,000 people. We've had fireworks, over the years. I don't know if that's going to continue forever, but it is a phenomenal gathering space. And again, just trying to upgrade that facility to make it so it works for all our various and sundry uses and is protected from the elements. And I think, Erica, you have a question. Oh, no, I'm sorry, Marlene. And who's recognizing?
Yeah,
Marlene. Yeah,
Chrissy,
go ahead.
Yeah, Chrissy can handle it. We've got 3.
Okay, sorry about that.
No, it's okay. Go ahead, Marlene.
My question is, can you go back? Was there a drawing of what the proposed stage will look like?
Not yet.
Not yet. Oh, okay, because I thought
that's what we're hoping to get from HDR, I think.
Okay.
We've engaged a firm.
That was my question.
Yeah, so we anticipate having that within the next couple of weeks. We have engaged a firm to do that work.
Great.
And it would just be concept. It's just going to be concept drawings, just to let you know. It's not going to be like a full blown, architectural rendering. It will be a concept drawing.
And once we get that too, we'll share that with the LPC on their behalf. Brent, if you would like to go ahead.
No, I'm just very familiar with what an asset this park is to the community. And there is one historic landmark in the park, which is the wall post that was part of the Singsting prison's northernmost boundary and was turned over to the park years ago. And we use this landmark as part of our waterfront tours that we give connected with Singsting Prison. So, and also we co-sponsored a very successful dance performance called The Weight Room in 2019. Fortunately, we had great weather, but I don't think that would have been able to be performed under a performance space as Dana is describing, but it's a tremendous asset and a surprising one to anybody who visits Ossining. But it's certainly a worthwhile project.
Hi. Can
Go
I
ahead,
say
Melita.
something?
Yeah, go ahead,
Yes.
Melita.
As a grandmother, I take my kids down there all the time. It's my favorite area to walk and be with the kids during COVID. That's where I went every day. And I am so excited if that beach can be really cleaned and make it the best we can, because I see so many parents, so many mothers with young children there, and I think we're not so close to the beach, so to have that space for our children, it's just incredible. It attracts a lot of people down there. We need to make it really more cleaned and probably even with umbrellas or whatever possible for our residents of Ossining to have a better use of it.
Yeah, and just for your information, I mean, part of the issue is, we have to get approval from the Department of Health, and the water quality, which we did spend time testing officially last year, isn't quite up to snuff. There's some projects that really need to take place first along the Singsting Kill, as well as with the wastewater treatment plant, that impact the ability of us for the town to actually get approval to open up that beach. So we're working on it, but it's not nothing. It's a big deal. So that's kind of hinders our ability. It's not like we can just rake the sand every day and put some umbrellas out there and open up the beach. It's a big deal to do, and we obviously we'd have to have lifeguards, etc. That's, to me, the more minor issue, but just so everybody knows.
Thank you.
Peter, do you have your hand raised? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just curious, has there been any exploration of the possibility of putting some sort of concession stand in with the redevelopment of the comfort station?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, there has. Absolutely. The other thing that, I would say, just to note is that certainly food trucks have become very popular, and some of those, what did you call it? Snack station, whatever, vendor concession stand. Sometimes they're not as effective, but we have talked to the particular models that we've been looking at that we could sort of put there we have been looking at ones with concession space in them. Yes, for the comfort station.
Thanks.
Any other LPC members have any questions?
I'm just wondering, is the bathroom that currently broken down there, or are there problems with the bathroom? Because it seems like, okay, because sometimes they're locked, sometimes they're not, and I'm wondering if there's if that's part of if that's an issue.
No, they're not broken. I mean, they do break because they get abused, like lots of public bathrooms, and then they have to be fixed. So on a during the summer, I can tell you that, frequently, a toilet will get clogged, and that will have to be dealt with. And sometimes it can be dealt with immediately and sometimes not. But they're not broken. When they are locked, it's because it's off season. They're not open all year round because the pipes would burst. So we don't leave them open during the winter. And sometimes we do bring in, porta potties to add capacity when we need to. But they've just been recently upgraded. We replaced all of the stalls, we replaced all the toilets, we replaced the sinks, I believe. We put in more, I think we painted them, we redid the floors, so they're actually in pretty good shape.
But I think some of the intention of relocating it is that we have found that the heavier use for people who need bathrooms tend to be by the spray park where the kids and the families are and the playground. And also if we do explore the opportunity to open the beach to swimming, we need to have changing facilities and showers and all that stuff at the southern end of the park. So that's kind of the primary impetus for relocating them. It's not that there's anything particularly wrong with those bathrooms. It's just that they'd be better suited at that area of the park, and also would free up space to take full advantage of the green space that we have at the park.
Right. I think you hit it on the head, Victoria. I see a lot of little kids hiding behind trees in that area of the park. And I have to wonder, even in my water quality mind, if there's a connection to the poor water quality at the beach.
Absolutely not. No,
If I could just,
that's a drop in the proverbial bucket of the Hudson River. No, much bigger issues, unfortunately. Yeah.
Can I just weigh in and say that we're getting off the DRI topic, and
Yeah.
I think that's money in the water.
Yeah.
And I don't want us to. We're focusing on the one thing, and I know the bathrooms are a whole different issue and everything else, but I think we're kind of like going down.
Yeah, we're actually at 157, as Marlene also pointed out, though we're off. So who the host, I think, needs to sort of make a decision about timing. I know this is exciting conversation. It definitely is something for the team to think about, as we stated all the way in the beginning. It isn't just about what it costs to do things. There is a tremendous amount of cost in management of whatever we build and maintain, and its sustainability. So that does come out in this conversation, but I do agree with Marlene, we may have gone a little bit off track.
Can we
we're at
entertain
158,
Dana White?
just
Dana
a
White's
reminder.
last question, maybe?
Yes.
Christy,
Dana, you
where
can
are
go.
we? Okay. And then,
Dana, be the last question, and then we'll wrap it up.
Well, no, then we'll need to do another 5 to 10 minutes for public comment. Yep, that's right.
Oh, thank you. My question was, which way would the stage be facing? It would be facing the way it faces now, or would it be turned?
I mean, right now, again, we really haven't gotten into the concept drawings, but I don't know, maybe you could bring the map up again.
Yeah, I don't
Valerie,
know.
maybe you could talk a little bit about that one.
Sorry. My computer is kind of freaking out at the moment.
Okay, well, basically there's a sort of little triangle piece at the southern end of the green space. Oh, you can go back to that last one. Yeah, right. So it would be facing sort of out into the green area, like, and use that little triangular piece to sort of the backstage area.
It would be facing north.
The stage would be here.
Yes.
The spectators would be here.
Yes.
Because one of the difficulties is when the sun sets.
That's another issue. Yeah,
Right.
It's in everybody's eyes.
All right, great. Dana, was that your only question?
That's it.
Okay, all right, great. Thank you so much, Town Supervisor and Valerie and Victoria, for that presentation. And thank you to all of our project sponsors for presenting on those projects today. It was very informative. I know it's definitely helpful for the LPC too to hear it directly from the sponsors themselves. I'm just going to quickly share my screen again, and bear with me. Okay, here we go. So next steps, Catherine?
Yes, so in terms of next steps, folks are aware that we have a second meeting next week, Thursday in the evening. We'll hear from the Village of Ossining about their project proposals. And then the next LPC meeting will be held in early June. We are pinning down a time and we'll be in touch as soon as we have it. And the third and final community meeting will be held in mid-June. Again, once we have a time, we'll send it around.
All right.
When will you have a date? When do you propose to have dates?
I hope today.
Okay.
Yes,
We
that's
really
the hope.
Needed this because these other dates were locked in, and
Yes, we
Okay.
understand. I know. And I know June can be a tough time. Okay, so in terms of public comment, if you are a member of the public and you would like to ask a question or offer a comment, please use the raise hand feature on Zoom. And then Jamie, I'll ask that you promote folks who have raised their hands to be panelists and can speak. We'll ask that folks limit their comments to 2 minutes.
So far, no one has their hands up.
Got it. Okay. I see there are 10 attendees, some of whom are folks who've already spoken. If there are any other attendees who would like to speak, please raise your hand on Zoom or press *9 on the phone, and we'll hear from you. All right. Okay, hearing none, I think we can wrap it up here. Thank you very much to everyone for joining us today. If after you have thought about these presentations, you have any more questions, please send an email to me or to Christy, and we'd be glad to get those answered. All right, otherwise we'll see you next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Thank you
Bye-bye. Have a
all.
good weekend.
Thank you.
Bye all, thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.